My husband was diagnosed with cancer. I ran from hospital to hospital, desperately trying to find a way to save him. But he secretly wrote a will. The beneficiary wasn't me, wasn't our daughter. When I saw the name on it, I froze. If it were you discovering the secret, would you stay silent or confront him immediately? Comment and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to follow the rest of my story. The clock on the wall showed exactly 2:15 p.m. when the phone rang. I was sitting in front of my computer screen, my eyes blurry from hours of searching for information on cancer treatments. The call was from the hospital, the doctor's voice gentle, yet carrying a ray of light cutting through the darkness that had swallowed me all week. Daniel didn't have cancer. It was just a mistake, since he listed me as the emergency contact when he was admitted. The hospital called me first with the results. I could barely believe my ears. Relief burst in my chest. I almost cried, overwhelmed with happiness. Daniel, the man I love, was staying with me. We still had an entire lifetime ahead of us. Just a week ago, my world had collapsed when the doctor told us Daniel had pancreatic cancer, the kind with an almost hopeless prognosis, the same disease that had taken my mother-in-law's life. He was only 36, far too young to face death. I remember vividly the moment the doctor looked at us, his eyes heavy with the weight of it. I felt like I was being shoved into a bottomless pit. Everything blurred around me. The only thing I could hear was the pounding of my own heart in my chest. But Daniel, he was strangely calm. He held my hand, his palm warm as always, and said, "It's going to be okay, Diana." His voice was soft, steady, but I was the opposite, completely panicked. I threw myself into research, took him to other hospitals to redo every test, even considered selling everything we owned to take him anywhere in the world for treatment. Every night, I prayed for a miracle. And now, the miracle had arrived. An error. Just an error. I tilted my head back, staring at the ceiling, silently thanking fate for giving him back to me. I hadn't even called Daniel yet to share the good news when my eyes accidentally drifted to the screen of his computer in the home office. A search history popped up, cold and sharp like the edge of a blade. How to write a will. I froze. My heart started pounding harder. Why would Daniel be looking up wills? His parents had passed away long ago. He had no siblings. Everything we owned was marital property. By law, if he passed away, everything would automatically belong to me and our daughter, Lily. So, why a will? I stared at his laptop, the one he always kept private. This office was his territory. He hated anyone touching his things. Even Lily and I rarely came in here. If my own computer hadn't broken today, I would never have used his. But now, his laptop felt like a Pandora's box, cracked open just enough to release a secret that suffocated me. Instinctively, I typed "will" into the search bar. My fingers trembled on the keyboard, as if touching something forbidden. And then, I found it. A document, simply titled, "Will Daniel Thompson." I clicked it open, my heart racing wildly. The screen filled with neatly drafted lines of text, and every single word cut into me like a knife. Every time I think back to that moment, the moment I read Daniel's will on his computer screen, my chest still tightens, the pain crushing me like I can't breathe. My whole body shook uncontrollably, as if my world had collapsed all over again. Half of our marital assets he left to another woman. Not me, not our daughter Lily, but to a close single colleague he'd known for years. The language in the will was gentle, filled with care. "I know I can't take care of her forever. If I have to leave, I just want her to have a stable life, free from financial worries, I went numb, my mind spinning. While I spent sleepless nights terrified of losing him, he was secretly planning to protect another woman. After he died, he didn't even ask me, didn't discuss it once, not a shred of respect for the wife who stood by him for more than a decade. In the will, Daniel wrote that after his death, his share of our joint assets would go to the soulmate of his life, Jessica. He said there hadn't been any love between us for a long time, that he endured this marriage only because of Lily. He wrote that I was a narcissist, selfish, controlling, verbally abusive, manipulative, and oppressive throughout the years we lived together. According to him, I was the cause of his mental breakdown, even the reason he got cancer. He said there were times he wanted to end his life, but Jessica, this woman, pulled him back from the edge, was the only light in his dark, hopeless world. Jessica, the woman he praised for having nothing yet somehow lighting his path, the one he claimed to admire. And so, before dying, he decided to leave her everything he possibly could as repayment. He emphasized that there was nothing improper between them, just gratitude. He hoped everyone who cared about him would understand, respect, and oversee the fulfillment of his final wishes. Every word of that will send a cold current down my spine. My head spun, refusing to believe these words were written by Daniel, the same man who had been my college classmate, my first love, my youth, my partner, through all the hard years. I thought we would grow old together, but now, in his eyes, I was the abuser, and Jessica, this woman from nowhere, was his savior? He's a university lecturer, someone who's devoted his life to research. His salary was modest, but he always prided himself on being above the scramble for money, living with quiet dignity. For years, I carried the weight of our family. The car, we bought it with my money. The house, under my name. Even the romantic gestures, the poems, the songs he hummed when inspiration struck, all of it was sustained by me. I thought I was protecting the noble part of him, the part untainted by a world obsessed with money. He once held my hand and told me I was his only safe place. When he was diagnosed with cancer, I didn't allow myself to fall apart. I called everyone I knew, reached out to doctors, begged every connection I had to save him. I cried until my chest ached, held him tight, and swore I'd sell everything we owned if that's what it took to cure him. That day, he looked at me, eyes full of emotion, called me foolish, as if I was the one staying behind while he prepared to leave forever. But behind those tender eyes was calculation, a blade he'd been sharpening day after day, waiting until I was at my most exhausted, my most trusting, to drive it straight through my heart. While I stayed up nights terrified of losing him, he sat quietly writing an indictment, blaming me for everything, painting me as the manipulator, the abuser, the source of his suffering. He called me the nightmare of his life, while Jessica became his salvation. He planned every step, carefully, deliberately, waiting until he could die and leave me this will like a final, devastating blow, to turn me into the villain in everyone's eyes. How can a person be so cruel as to crush the heart of someone who's walked half a lifetime beside them? I sat frozen in front of the screen, my heart growing colder and colder, as if I were being buried alive. My fingers trembled on the keyboard as I typed Jessica into the search bar. Within seconds, a matching result appeared. She was one of Daniel's colleagues. I clicked on the profile picture, and an image of a thin, pale woman appeared on the screen. She looked so fragile, almost breakable, with long, loose hair and eyes that seemed to be hiding an unnamed sorrow. 2 years ago, she was hired at the university, where Daniel worked as a research secretary for his project team, responsible for handling administrative tasks. But from her very first days, she frequently requested leave, and often came late or left early. The research team had hired a secretary to reduce the administrative burden for the professors, but ever since Jessica joined, Daniel's workload had only increased. At first, Daniel often complained to me, saying he'd rather she didn't come at all. Her tasks were either incomplete or filled with mistakes, leaving Daniel and the rest of the research team to not only manage their own work, but also clean up the mess she left behind. Everyone in the team expressed dissatisfaction, until one day, while submitting an application for a national research grant, Jessica accidentally submitted two sets of documents incorrectly. As the project lead, Daniel lost his temper and yelled at her, telling her that if she couldn't do the job, she should just quit. That was the day Jessica broke down in tears, pleading with him in front of everyone, saying that her husband had died in a car accident. Her in-laws had kicked her and her son out of their home, and that under no circumstances could she afford to lose this job. Her 5-year-old son, she said, was born with a congenital heart defect and needed a large sum of money for surgery. She apologized to everyone, promising she would work harder and never let anyone down again. That day, after telling me everything that happened, Daniel could only sigh and said he felt terribly guilty. I guess from that day forward, he started occasionally bringing toys and picture books from our daughter to give to Jessica. He stopped complaining about her mistakes at work and only said that she had suffered too much, and he wanted to help in any way he could. I remember there were a few times during holiday breaks when Daniel took our daughter to BBQ parties with his colleagues, and Jessica and her son were there too. Because of work, I never joined any of those BBQ gatherings, but my daughter once told me she didn't like Jessica's son. She said he was rough, aggressive, always grabbing things, and often cursed. That time, Daniel scolded our daughter, saying the boy was seriously ill, and as the older, healthy child, she should be more patient and kind instead of competing with a younger, sick boy who was 2 years younger. I argued with Daniel then. I defended our daughter, telling him that no matter what illness the boy had, right and wrong should still be clear, and he couldn't always force our daughter to endure everything. "You're being unreasonable," I snapped. Daniel went silent, his face flushed red, refusing to argue further, just mumbling something under his breath as he turned away. I thought that was the end of it. I thought it was just a fleeting outburst. I thought that was all there was between Jessica and my family. But now, thinking back, remembering Daniel scolding his own daughter to defend Jessica's son, I realized that maybe, even then, their relationship was no longer just professional. It had already crossed the line of colleagues, quietly slipping into something deeper, darker. Before Daniel was diagnosed with cancer, he often worked overtime, not just at night, but on weekends, during winter breaks, and summer vacations. He was always buried in work. Even after receiving the mistaken cancer diagnosis, he kept working late, as if nothing had changed. Just a few days ago, I was confused and asked him, "You're seriously ill. Why are you still working overtime?" He looked at me, his voice low but steady. "There's a project about to be completed. I want to finish it so I won't have any regrets." At the time, I thought he was just trying to fulfill his responsibilities. But now, looking back, I realized that the no regrets he spoke of had nothing to do with work. It was about something entirely different. I splashed cold water on my face, the icy sting tightening my skin. Then, I drank a large glass of iced coffee, forcing myself to stay calm. I needed to act. Grabbing my car keys, I drove straight to the university where Daniel worked, arriving just in time for the end of the workday. Standing in front of the campus gate, I took a deep breath and called him, keeping my voice as normal as I could. "Honey, are you coming home for dinner tonight? If you are, I'll make your favorite grilled steak." On the other end, Daniel's voice came through, filled with apology. "I'd love to, Diana, but I'm swamped today. I haven't even had lunch. Don't tire yourself out cooking. I'll grab something at the campus cafeteria and keep working." I nodded, replying softly, "All right then." But before I hung up, he added, his tone gentle, almost comforting, "Don't forget to eat, okay? Now that I'm sick, you need to take care of yourself. We still have Lily." My throat tightened. He wrote a will, leaving nothing to our daughter, Yet he still dared to bring up Lily? A wave of nausea rose in my chest, but I forced myself to answer coldly. I know, and quickly ended the call. Standing there at the gate, I stared at the iron bars, silently praying, even if just for a sliver of hope, that Daniel was truly staying late to work. But less than 5 minutes later, I saw his car glide past the gate. My heart clenched. I got into my car, kept several vehicles between us, and followed. Just 100 meters ahead, at the next turn, Daniel stopped the car. A woman stepped in. Long, loose hair over her shoulders. A simple white dress, her frame slim and fragile. I didn't need to see her face to know. It was Jessica. The image of her from the university's staff directory flashed vividly in my mind. 30 minutes later, Daniel drove into the parking lot by the seaside park. From there, you didn't even need to leave the car to admire the ocean glittering under the sunset. Ironically, I was the one who had shown him this place. I once told him, my voice bright with excitement, "Honey, drive out here, play some music, breathe in the ocean breeze. It'll make you feel better." And now, this was the place where he brought another woman. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, feeling the blood in my veins turn to ice. While trailing Daniel's car, I called my lawyer. His voice was calm on the other end. "In your case, Daniel has the right to make a will, leaving his share of the joint property to anyone he wants. However, that only applies if he isn't involved in an extramarital affair during the marriage. If you can prove infidelity, the will can be invalidated." I hung up, a cold shiver shooting down my spine. So, I needed proof. Proof that Daniel and Jessica were more than close colleagues. Perhaps out of fear of being discovered, Daniel and Jessica stayed in the car for a full hour at the parking lot, never stepping out. Through the fogged windows, I could see them talking, gestures soft and intimate. Then they drove back toward the university. Jessica got out at a turn just before the main gate, while Daniel drove alone into the campus parking area. I waited a few minutes to make sure he had gone inside, then called him again, my voice urgent. "Honey, you're at the office, right? A student just contacted me and said your computer's having some kind of software issue. You need to check it immediately, or you could lose all your project data." On the other end, Daniel froze, his voice slightly panicked. Yeah, okay, I'll check right now." But through my windshield, I could see him still sitting in his car, gripping the steering wheel tightly, as if trying to compose himself. It took him 2, maybe 3 minutes before he finally stepped out and rushed toward the office building, his movements frantic. I didn't hesitate. My hands trembling, I used the spare key to unlock his car and quickly removed the dash cam. I could only pray he hadn't erased the recording yet. And luck, for once, was on my side. Although all the older footage had been wiped clean, the video capturing Daniel and Jessica's drive to the seaside parking lot was still intact. Act 5. The premium dashcam captured everything in brutal clarity, like a merciless film playing out frame by frame. The moment Jessica stepped into the car, she slid into the passenger seat with a natural ease, as if it had always been her place. Daniel started the engine, his left hand on the wheel, while his right immediately reached for hers, gripping tightly as though he never wanted to let go. They didn't exchange many words, just a glance, a faint smile, a look so deep it felt as if the entire world could disappear in that moment. At a red light, Daniel couldn't wait any longer. He leaned over, kissed her, his voice low and thick with emotion. "I've been wanting to kiss you since we were in the office." His left hand left the wheel, wandering over Jessica's body, his movements hurried, as if time itself was a luxury he couldn't afford. Jessica smiled softly, savoring the moment, her voice gentle like a whisper. "Next time, I can come into your office and help you." But Daniel shook his head, his tone firm. "No. I can handle it. I'm dying, Jess. I don't fear judgment anymore. But if anyone sees us, you'll get dragged into trouble." Jessica leaned closer, wrapping her arms around his, her voice tender, almost pleading. "I'm not afraid of anything. Ever since I told you how I truly feel, I've been ready to face whatever comes. I just want to be with you, Completely. Her words shook Daniel. He reached over, brushing the tip of her nose with his finger, his gesture full of affection. Jessica, don't worry. I've finished the will. After I die, my entire share of the assets goes to you and your son. I won't let you or your boy suffer anymore. Jessica burst into tears, her shoulders trembling as she sobbed quietly, her voice breaking. I don't need your money. I don't care about that. I just want you to be healthy, to stay with me forever. Daniel smiled, his eyes soft and warm. I know. It's your kindness that made me fall in love with you. 10 years with Diana can't compare to 6 months with you. Jessica's eyes turned red, her grip on his hand tightening, her voice trembling as she begged him to divorce me so they could be together. Maybe she'll agree to the divorce, she whispered. By then, the car had stopped at the Seaside Park's parking lot, where the setting sun shimmered across the water. Daniel pulled Jessica into his arms, holding her tightly. Don't be foolish. Diana isn't simple. She only cares about money. Her entire world reeks of it. She lives in lies and calculations. If it weren't for my mother's dying wish, I never would have chased her, never would have married her. He sighed heavily, his voice carrying years of quiet resentment. 10 years of marriage, all I did was endure. It's too late for regrets now. At least I still have you. If I asked for a divorce, Diana wouldn't let me go easily. I just want my last days to be peaceful with you, without wasting my strength fighting her. He paused, locking eyes with Jessica. After I'm gone, find Mark Sullivan. I've arranged everything. Even after buying the house, the remaining money is enough for you and your son to live comfortably for half your lives. Overcome with emotion, Jessica buried herself against his chest, pressing a hand over his mouth as if she couldn't bear to hear the word die again. But Daniel, like a devoted mentor, continued giving instructions. When I die, find Mark Sullivan, show them the will, tell everyone Diana pushed me to my death, so I left her nothing. Jessica tilted her head up, her tear-filled eyes wide, innocence mixed with hesitation. Doing that, isn't it a little cruel? Daniel chuckled softly, brushing her nose again, his voice tender. Don't worry. Diana makes money easily. Losing half won't matter to her. I gripped the dashcam in my hands, my chest tearing apart from the pain. He knew most of our joint assets were built from my work, my sacrifices, and yet he planned it all out, using me, betraying me so completely. Daniel, the man I once loved, the man I once trusted, now stood before me as a stranger, a man who had orchestrated an entire performance behind my back to smear me, to strip away everything I rightfully deserved. Act 6. My mind was a tangled mess. Tears spilled down my cheeks uncontrollably, each drop scorching hot against my skin. My chest tightened, like someone was squeezing the air out of my lungs, and my stomach twisted painfully. I couldn't hold it together anymore. I stumbled out of the car, bent over by the roadside, and vomited violently. Turns out, when pain reaches its breaking point, it doesn't just shatter the heart. It forces the body to revolt, to purge everything inside. And yet, in the middle of that unbearable agony, my mind played back memories of Daniel, like an old faded film, blurred at the edges, but painfully sharp where it mattered. We went to the same university, though we weren't in the same program. Daniel was the star of the school, the boy with sharp, confident eyes, who dominated every debate stage. I met him under unusual circumstances. His mother had just been diagnosed with cancer, and my mother worked at a renowned hospital. I don't know how he found out, but one afternoon, he approached me out of the blue, asking, no, pleading, for my help in arranging an appointment with a specialist through my mother. He stood there, tall and composed, but his bloodshot eyes and restless hands betraying his usual confidence. In that moment, I saw his desperation. A young man who had likely never lowered himself to beg anyone for anything, yet now gathering every ounce of courage just to ask. I couldn't turn him away. I talked to my mom, asked her to help, even requested that she pay special attention to his mother's case. Daniel was deeply grateful. Every time he came back from visiting home, he would bring small gifts: homemade cookies, local chocolates. Embarrassed, I told him not to, but he'd just smile, cheeks flushed, voice clumsy. "It's nothing special, Diana. Please don't mind it. It's just my way of saying thanks." His eyes were so sincere then, I couldn't help but be moved. But his mother didn't make it. After the funeral, he came back with a basket of fresh blueberries, his eyes red, his posture frail but still upright, like a lone pine tree standing against the wind. I thought, he liked me. And me, the independent, strong-minded girl. I couldn't stop my heart from softening toward him. But at the time, I was preparing to study abroad, unwilling to get entangled in any relationship. He never confessed, and I pretended not to notice. Gradually, though, we became close. We, accidentally, ran into each other at the library, and he'd quietly sit across from me, studying without saying much. We had meals together, biked along the coast, talked about our dreams and futures. He was an incredible listener, patient and steady, always there when I vented about the pressure of applications and deadlines. Thanks to him, that stressful period became bearable. On graduation night, he stood on stage and said he wanted to sing for the girl he loved. The whole school knew the song was for me, but after the party, all he said was, "The future's wide open for you, Diana." I asked him directly, "If you like me that much, why haven't you confessed?" He blushed, hesitated, and finally admitted, "I know you're leaving soon. I don't want to hold you back." His words shook me. Then came a career opportunity that made me choose between leaving and staying. Daniel became the biggest reason I decided to stay. We fell into a relationship as naturally as if it had been written in the stars. But marriage wasn't what I imagined. I became the financial backbone, starting my own company and building a career from scratch. Daniel pursued his master's, then his PhD, and eventually stayed on as a lecturer. I never questioned his choices, and he always supported me. We had Lily, our sweet little girl. Before his cancer diagnosis, I thought my life was nearly perfect. There was only one flaw. In the past 6 months, something had changed. He wasn't the same. We stopped being intimate. I gently suggested he see a doctor, but he brushed it off. "I'm just tired, Diana." I respected his pride, didn't push, even asked our housekeeper to prepare nutritious meals for him. When he was diagnosed with cancer, I blamed myself, thinking I'd failed to notice how weak his body had become because I was too focused on everything else. But now, I see the truth. It wasn't that he couldn't. He didn't want to, with me. He was saving his faithfulness for Jessica, the woman he loved. I grew up in a busy household, taught to be strong, independent, never dependent on anyone. Daniel was the only person who made me believe I could lean on someone for life. I considered him the most important person in my world, lowering myself countless times to smooth over conflicts he created with colleagues and superiors because of his arrogance. I gave him everything, and he repaid me with calculation. Maybe he never loved me. The love I thought we shared, the silent understanding between two people, was nothing but an illusion. He pursued me, married me, only because his dying mother wanted it. A reason so weightless, yet it chained half of my life. I copied the dashcam footage to my phone, my hands trembling, but my resolve steady. Drowning in blind grief wasn't who I was. What I gave freely, but Daniel failed to cherish, I would take back, piece by piece. If he loved Jessica that much, then I, the legal wife, would clear every obstacle in his path to his so-called true love. He said I only cared about money. Fine. I want to see, when Daniel is still alive, but stripped of his career, his reputation, his wealth, will he still love her the same way? In the days following the dashcam incident, Daniel still left the house early each morning and returned late at night, always using the same excuse: urgent projects. But I noticed something different. Every morning as he walked out the door, his cheeks were flushed, his steps light, his eyes bright, like a man reliving the rush of young love. He and Jessica, both so consumed by the illusion of their so-called romance, never suspected that his illness was nothing more than a medical mistake. One evening, Daniel sat down on the sofa, hesitating before saying softly, "Diana, I haven't been sleeping well lately, and I don't want to disturb you. Maybe we should sleep separately for a while?" I looked straight into his eyes, no hesitation, and nodded. "All right." He exhaled deeply, his lips curling slightly, as though a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders. I turned away, hiding the cold smile tugging at my lips. Relieved? So was I. Having to suppress the urge to slap him across the face every single day had exhausted me long enough. While Daniel was busy drowning himself in his sweet little fantasy with Jessica, I quietly reached out to Laura Bennett, my divorce lawyer. Inside her small but cozy office, Laura studied the will and the dashcam footage carefully. She sighed, placing her hand on the desk, her gaze heavy with disbelief. "Diana, this is really your husband's will? Not your enemy's?" I let out a bitter laugh, my throat tightening. "Yes, but if I do nothing, I'll become the villain, the cruel wife everyone hates, while his mistress walks away proudly with half the wealth I've worked my whole life to build." I clenched my fists tightly. People say an angry woman is terrifying, but a man's betrayal cuts deeper than anything. Laura pushed a cup of warm lemon tea toward me, the gentle aroma soothing the storm tearing through my chest. Her voice was calm, steady. "I've been in this field a long time, Diana. I've seen it all. But believe me, time heals everything. As long as you don't fall apart, you'll come out of this stronger." She was right. I wasn't the one cheating. I wasn't the one who broke vows. And yet, it felt like someone had poured a bucket of filthy water over me. Disgusting, humiliating. I wasn't unfaithful, I wasn't wrong. So why did I feel tainted? Every night, I lay awake, my mind spiraling with endless, unanswered questions. Why did Daniel do this to me? Why me? How unlucky must I be to have been chosen as his prey, to have been foolish enough to love him? The cruelty of infidelity isn't just in the heartache, it's in how it drags you into a vortex of self-doubt. Was it me? Was I unlovable? I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger staring back, tired, wounded, yet still clinging desperately to the last fragments of dignity. But Laura's words, like a lifeline, pulled me out of that darkness. Even if someone dumps filthy water on me, as long as I wash it off, I'm still me. If I let this pain consume me, if I destroy myself from within, only then will the stain truly last forever. That would be the cost I could never recover from. I inhaled deeply, lifting my head, my gaze steady and sharper than ever. I looked at Laura and laid out my entire plan without holding back. Under her guidance, I began preparing, step by step, to protect everything that was rightfully mine in the divorce. Every document, every account, every shared asset. I reviewed everything carefully, compiled detailed lists, and made sure Daniel and Jessica would never have a chance to take what I had built. Daniel wants to play betrayal? Fine, but I will make him understand. The price of betrayal is far more than he ever imagined. Act 8. 3 days after the dashcam incident, it was rare for Daniel not to work late. When I pushed the door open and stepped into the house, a faint scent of herbs drifted from the kitchen. Daniel was busy at the stove, chopping vegetables with the focus of a professional chef. The housekeeper and Lily weren't home. He came out, his smile warm, almost nostalgic, like when we first fell in love. I asked the housekeeper to take Lily to her grandparents. "Tonight, I want to have dinner with you, just the two of us. It's been so long since we've sat down together." His gaze was soft, tender, as if Jessica didn't exist, as if there were no will, no betrayal. But he didn't know I had hired a private investigator. Every day, the PI recovered and sent me everything he had tried to delete from the dash cam. That morning, I received the latest video, Daniel holding Jessica in his arms, kissing her in the car, his smile bright and carefree like a young man in love. Not at all like a cancer patient on the brink of death. I could hear him laugh, his voice overflowing with happiness. "You make me feel alive again." Now he stood in front of me, offering a cup of herbal tea, his voice gentle. "I made this just for you, Diana." I took the cup, staring into his eyes, my heart cold as ice. So this is how far a man can go when he cheats, how convincingly he can fake tenderness. I gripped the cup tightly, swallowing my rage, silently thinking, "You play this role well." Dinner was set on the table, filled with all my favorite dishes: tender grilled beef, creamy mashed potatoes, fresh green salad. Staring at the spread, memories came rushing back like an old faded film. When we first met, neither of us knew how to cook. Whenever he visited, Daniel would quietly watch my mother in the kitchen, memorizing my favorite dishes, awkwardly trying to recreate them later. That sincerity of his had softened my mother, who never liked him, slowly changing her mind. Back then, I truly believed he loved me. Not because of his mother's dying wish, not out of obligation, but from his heart. But now, those memories only cut deeper. I sat down, glanced at each dish, then looked at him and said mockingly, "All my favorites, huh? What's the occasion? Planning your last supper?" Daniel froze, a flicker of unease flashing in his eyes so briefly it was almost invisible. He pushed the plate of beef toward me, forcing a strained smile. "Diana, you know, my time isn't much anymore." He lowered his gaze, his voice softening. "I just wanted to thank you. Today I have something important to discuss with you." Huh, the scripted opening act. I could almost picture how many times he rehearsed this speech in his head. But I kept my expression neutral, playing the polite audience, waiting for the climax of his performance. Daniel took a deep breath and continued, "My illness. I don't have much time left. These past few days, I can feel my body weakening. Everything feels unbearable. Diana, I'm scared, really scared." He paused, his eyes reddening, as if struggling to hold back tears. "But what I fear most isn't dying. I'm afraid of you and Lily having to watch me fall apart, to see me reduced to nothing in my final days. Lily's still so young. I want her memories of me to always be of a confident, strong father, not a dying man gasping for breath. Diana, you understand me, right?" Opening build-up emotional hook. His act was flawless. I stared at him, truly seeing for the first time how ugly the man before me had become. I forced myself to sound natural, asking softly, "So, what are you saying?" Daniel hesitated, as if summoning every ounce of courage. "I want to go away for a while, alone. I need time to rest, to clear my mind. Please, don't look for me. Tell Lily I went abroad for work. When she's older, tell her the truth, that her father always loved her." He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders trembling as if he were crying. An award-worthy performance. But I wasn't fooled. I answered, my voice heavy with sadness, laced with restraint. "Daniel, don't say that. We'll figure this out. I'm not giving up on you. So don't give up on yourself, okay?" Just as I expected, he shook his head immediately. "No, Diana. I don't want to waste what little time I have left in hospitals, with treatments and chemo, suffering the way my mother did." His voice grew louder, more agitated, until he finally shot up from his chair, slamming his hand on the table. "Diana, I don't want to live like that." Staring at his fake, shameless face, I couldn't keep pretending anymore. My tone turned cold, sharp. "You're not going anywhere alone. I've already contacted doctors overseas. As soon as we confirm the dates, I'll book the tickets. Be ready to go." Daniel froze, a flash of panic in his eyes, but he said nothing more. Dinner ended in silence. I stood, left the table, and drove to my mother's house to pick up Lily. That night, at 1 a.m., Daniel thought I was fast asleep. Through the phone's live feed, I watched him quietly drag a suitcase out the door, packed and ready long before. The tiny camera I'd hidden in the corner captured every step he took. He didn't pause, didn't even glance at Lily's room, not for a single second. The father who once called her his whole world walked away without hesitation. I lay in the dark, my chest frozen, but my mind razor sharp. As the door closed behind him, I stepped into Lily's room, held her tiny hand in mine as she slept peacefully. No father? That's fine. From now on, I'll be her entire world. The next morning, I knew it was time to push this performance to its peak. I rushed to Daniel's university, my eyes red and swollen, my face deliberately showing traces of panic. I walked like someone on the verge of collapse, making sure that anyone who saw me would believe my entire world had just fallen apart. I let my voice tremble, tears pooling in my eyes, as I said to anyone who asked. Daniel was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He didn't want to burden his family, so he left home. My shoulders shook, tears streaming down my cheeks as I whispered between sobs. We've been together since college. He's my first love, the man I've loved the most. Even if I have to sell everything we own, I have to save him. My words, blending despair and raw sincerity, pierced into those who heard them like a knife to the heart. Daniel's colleagues stood frozen, stunned. They had no idea he was sick. Finally, some sighed, their voices heavy. If he's sick, he should be treated, not run away. Another placed a hand on my shoulder gently. We'll help you. Don't worry. I squeezed their hands, my gaze filled with gratitude, but inside I was ice cold. Every sympathetic look, every promise to help, was another brick I laid down to build the perfect stage for my act. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. Cold, sharp as a blade. Don't be so quick to judge. If Professor Thompson left, he must have his reasons. I turned, and there stood Jessica. She was dressed in a long white dress, her figure frail and delicate, but her eyes were icy, with a trace of mockery as they met mine. I froze, baffled at how she dared to speak to me in that tone. After all, everything she had, Daniel's protection, the ambition to claim what wasn't hers, came from my money. I stepped closer, locking my grip tightly around her wrist, my voice cutting, each word deliberate. What did he tell you? Jessica stepped back, her face flushing crimson. I don't know anything. Don't know? I tightened my hold. Then why did you just say he has his reasons? All eyes turned toward Jessica. The air grew thick with tension. Her voice faltered, trembling. I just think, maybe because of your controlling nature, maybe you should respect his decision. I stared at her, as though I'd just heard the most absurd thing in the world. You mean I should just stand by and watch my husband die? My question made her choke, her lips quivering, unable to form a single word. I turned to the others, my voice breaking as fresh tears fell. But I can't. I love him. I can't let him give up like this. Professor Megan, one of Daniel's older colleagues, stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Don't listen to her, Diana. We'll help you. She shot Jessica a glance full of quiet reproach. Jessica stood there pale-faced, her lips pressed tight, unable to speak. Daniel had disappeared, but I knew exactly where he was. My private investigator sent hourly updates, tracking every step he took. He wasn't resting or leaving the city like he claimed. For days, Daniel had been hiding in the apartment he rented for Jessica. During the day, he played video games, laughing freely. At night, he tangled himself around Jessica, the two of them living like carefree lovers in their little bubble. Just as planned, according to the dashcam recording, Jessica had requested annual leave, sent her son to a care facility, and then driven with Daniel to her small hometown of Springfield. In Springfield, they toured multi-million-dollar model homes, their eyes shining as if they could already see their future unfolding. The detective recounted, his tone incredulous. They're choosing the most expensive houses, Diana. It's like they're living in a dream. I was equal parts stunned and furious. I had never revealed the exact size of my savings to Daniel, yet he had somehow calculated almost precisely the value of our marital assets. So much for leaving in peace, not wanting to be a burden. It was all a facade. His real motive was money, the very wealth I had spent years building, penny by penny. His supposed disdain for materialism never stopped him from secretly calculating every last cent, carving out a future for himself and Jessica. Let them keep dreaming about their luxury homes. It didn't matter. They weren't buying anything. Meanwhile, I played my role perfectly, every day portraying the devastated, heartbroken wife. I handed over my company to my best friend and COO, sent Lily and the housekeeper to my parents, and prepared for my final strike. Social media. I created a TikTok account under the name Finding My Beloved Husband Daniel and posted a carefully crafted video. It was a timeline of our love story. Old college photos of us in matching uniforms, wedding moments, memories of us laughing and crying together, clips of us eating at street-side food stalls, dining in upscale restaurants. One shot of Daniel holding me tightly, whispering, "I just want you to always be happier than me." The video struck deep. Anyone watching it teared up, murmuring, This, this is what real love looks like." It exploded overnight, going from a few thousand likes to millions, flooding with comments. "Bring him home! This love story can't end like this." Before the video could reach Daniel, I accidentally ran into a real estate agent, the one who helped him rent the apartment. He recognized Daniel instantly from the video, his eyes lighting up. "I know this guy." I smiled inwardly. The web had been cast wide and tight. All that was left was for Daniel to walk into it himself. To strengthen the narrative, I arranged meetings with several professors who were close to Daniel, and they readily agreed to come with me to help persuade him to come home. But when we arrived to speak with the agent again, he hesitated awkwardly, scratching his head. Last night, just to be sure, I went back to the building. "I saw that man with a woman. She called him husband. I must have been wrong. He's already married." He smiled sheepishly, not even considering the possibility of infidelity. In his naive mind, such betrayal didn't exist. Still, I led everyone to Jessica's apartment. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding, but my mind razor-sharp. The door swung open, and there stood Jessica, wearing a flimsy, revealing dress, her pale skin glowing under the light. The moment she saw me, she screamed. Immediately, Daniel rushed out from the bedroom, wearing nothing but his underwear, his hair a mess, his eyes wide. "What's going on, honey?" The entire room froze. The professors behind me stiffened, their faces caught between shock and outrage. Daniel scrambled back into the bedroom, shouting, "Get out! All of you, get out! Who gave you permission to enter? I'll sue you for illegal trespassing." Amid the chaos, a delivery man walked in, holding up a bag, looking confused by the crowded room. "Delivery for Mr. Thompson?" Without hesitation, I snatched the bag from his hand, pulled out 2 boxes of condoms, and hurled them straight into Jessica's face. She stumbled back, clutching her cheek, her eyes wide with horror. I stormed into the bedroom, where Daniel was fumbling to throw on his clothes, his shirt half-buttoned, messy and skewed. I placed my phone, already streaming live, on the table. All those years of self-defense classes paid off. Every strike I landed on Daniel was precise, controlled, deliberate, channeling years of anguish into my fists. I didn't hit to injure, only to make him feel the full weight of my fury. When others rushed in to intervene, I stopped, panting, but for the first time, I felt liberated. Then I turned to the room itself and began tearing it apart. The sound of shattering glass echoed like a storm, each crash releasing another piece of the pain, the resentment I had buried inside. Every item in that apartment had been bought by Daniel, with my money on my cards. I yanked open the bedside drawer and dumped its contents onto the floor. A photo album fell out. I picked it up and flipped through it. Every page was filled with pictures of Daniel and Jessica, arms wrapped around each other, laughing like two people living in their perfect fantasy. Tucked between the pages was the will, the document Daniel had drafted, leaving half our assets to Jessica after his death and blaming his supposed demise on me. Daniel and Jessica lunged forward, desperate to snatch it back, but the professor stepped in, blocking them. I stood tall, facing the camera of my live stream, my voice steady and sharp as I read every single word of the will aloud. The room fell silent. The only sound was my voice, slicing through the air like a blade. When I finished, I looked directly at Daniel. His eyes darted away, his face pale, drained of color. And then I asked the one question I had carried in my chest for so long. Why? Why would you do this to me? That question needed no answer. It was my final scream, ripping apart every lie, tearing down every facade, marking the end of the play Daniel thought he was directing. It was the final voice, hoarse and broken, of someone who once loved him with everything she had. I stood there, tears streaming down my face, my chest tightening with each breath, my voice trembling in the heavy silence of the room. We've been married for 10 years. You can betray me. You can fall in love with someone else. But if you had been honest, if you had faced me, we could have parted peacefully. Why? Why did you choose this way? Just so you could give her half of our assets. You didn't hesitate to slander me, to accuse me, to trample on my dignity. Do you even realize that could have landed me in prison? My voice cracked into a scream, raw and agonizing, my throat burning, tears pouring endlessly, scalding hot against my trembling hands. This was no longer a confrontation. It was the desperate cry of a heart betrayed, torn between pain, anger, and utter despair. Part of it was performance, but the other part, the deepest part, was pure truth, words that had been lodged in my chest for days, boiling like they were ready to shatter me. And now, finally, I let them out. All of them, in ragged, gasping breaths. Daniel lowered his head, pale and shaken, unable to meet my eyes. But Jessica. She raised her chin, her voice shrill, venomous, slicing through me like knives. Daniel was never happy. If you hadn't suffocated him, manipulated him, crushed his spirit, he wouldn't have gotten cancer in the first place. That was it, I snapped. I stepped toward her, channeling every ounce of hatred into my gaze, my voice cold, sharp, every word like a blade. Shut up. Jessica's face went white. I leaned closer, my tone cutting, clipped, lethal. You're living off my money, renting with my money, dressing with my money. Who do you think you are, to stand here and lecture me? Daniel panicked, wrapping his arms protectively around Jessica, his reddened eyes blazing as he shouted hoarsely, I've had enough of you. All you care about is money. Jessica is the only one who ever understood me. I just wanted to live my last days in peace. But now you know everything. Divorce me. The words spilled out, shameless, loud, right into the live streaming camera, turning my carefully crafted missing husband act into undeniable reality, stripping away every mask he'd worn. The live stream view count skyrocketed by the second. Daniel, convinced he was dying and blinded by his obsession with Jessica, threw away every shred of dignity, bearing himself completely. He lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot, shouting again, his voice breaking but defiant. Divorce. Our daughter stays with you, but the assets, I want half. One sentence. Filthy, vile. So much for love, for illness, for conscience, all reduced to cold, hard numbers. I laughed bitterly through my tears, then hissed back, my voice sharp enough to cut air. I earned that money. It's for our daughter. And you want to hand it to your mistress? Daniel roared back, his face flushed, veins bulging, eyes wild. Diana! You know the marriage laws. You earn it. Half of it's mine. So what if I cheated? It's not a big deal. I'm dying. I'm not afraid of you. Today, we're divorcing for sure. And the assets, they'll be split exactly as the law says. I stared at him, my grip tightening around my phone. Then, without a word, I pressed the button. The live stream ended. Silence. In that moment, I made the call. Laura. My voice was hoarse, but steady. On the other end, my lawyer, Laura Bennett, was already waiting. Her voice was calm, but edged with steel, the precision of legal authority. We can file an emergency motion, freeze all assets, pull his bank records, block every transfer under his name. I nodded, no hesitation. Even before calling Laura, I had already spoken to Lily. She was only 7.5, but her voice was firm, unwavering. Daddy made mistakes, and Daddy has to be punished. He has to face the consequences. My little girl, but her clear, resolute gaze gave me more strength than any comforting words ever could. With the help of a skilled forensic accountant, I uncovered everything, every single cent Daniel had spent on Jessica. From the big expenses, rehabilitation treatment for her son, apartment rent, flights, down to the smallest things, coffee, sanitary pads, and condoms. And to be fair, Jessica's beautiful life? She hadn't spent a single penny of her own. Daniel's monthly salary vanished instantly. Even with me covering $3,000 to $4,000 of his credit card payments every month, he still racked up over $20,000 in debt. I revealed every single invoice during a live stream, sending copies directly to Daniel, and asked him in front of millions watching, This is your love? Your love is using the money I earned to feed your mistress?" Daniel stayed silent, but his silence was louder than any confession. The court wasn't silent. With Laura's arguments, with the mountain of evidence, the verdict was delivered. Jessica was ordered to return $200,000 in illegal funds. Daniel was found guilty of marital asset dissipation, and I was awarded 90% of our assets. He was left with a fraction, plus penalties for attempted fraudulent transfers. Before leaving the courthouse, I gave him one last gift: the truth about his diagnosis. What he thought was terminal cancer was just acute pancreatitis. He wasn't dying. He had only lost everything else: his dignity, his money, his love. And his face, now plastered across every corner of the internet. As Daniel's name exploded across social media, burning like wildfire, the university where he worked was forced to respond. After a rigorous investigation, an official statement was released. Both Daniel and Jessica were terminated. The reputation they once had, their carefully crafted image of Daniel's nobility, crumbled to ash. They faced massive financial penalties, and Jessica was ordered to repay the funds she had taken. Her credibility in the community shattered, collapsing like a sandcastle against the tide. I didn't look back. I didn't gloat. I just walked forward, quietly. Lily and I moved to a small house in San Diego, where golden sunlight spills across tree-lined streets. A modest home, with a lavender-filled garden and a wooden swing, became the place where we began again. Every morning, I stood by the window, holding a steaming cup of coffee, watching Lily run barefoot through the grass, her laughter bright and weightless, like wind chimes dancing in the breeze. My company still ran smoothly, but I carved out more time for her, for painting together, reading stories, dreaming about horizons untouched by betrayal. Life now felt lighter, freer, as though I had finally stripped off the heavy armor I'd worn for so many years. On the flight leaving our old city, I stared out the window as the sun rose, gilding the clouds in soft gold, a promise of better days ahead. An email from Daniel popped into my inbox, a long-winded apology full of empty words. I scrolled through it once, then deleted it without hesitation. He was no longer part of the story I was writing. I was still here, still radiant, still Diana, the woman who once loved fiercely, who had been broken completely, but who now stands tall, unshaken, and free. On quiet San Diego afternoons, I often sit on the swing, watching the sunset wash the garden in gentle amber light. I no longer ask why. The pain that once cut like a blade has healed, leaving behind scars that remind me of my own strength. I've learned to let go, not to forget, but to live fully. From now on, Lily and I will paint a new picture together, one without shadows of betrayal, only the soft, unbroken light of freedom and hope.